Now in this project, we are going to practice TDD. What is TDD? TDD is short for test-driven development. It means we write the test first and then we develop the program. First, we write the test, make sure it fails, then we write the code till our test runs successfully. In our project, we are going to create a calculator with TDD approach. Please pause the video and see if you can do it on your own, then come back and see how I would do it. Okay, now let's see how I would do it. First of all, let's require the package for testing. Do you remember the video on testing? We introduced two packages. One was PHP unit and the other one was pest. Now I'm going to use pest, but feel free to use PHP unit yourself. Let's install pest now. Composer require pest PHP pest. Composer require pest PHP and then pest. Yes. Okay, now it's installed. Let's initialize the package and then use it to see if it has installed successfully. Do you remember how we initialized the pest package? We would go to vendor, bin, pest, and then we run init. It will prepare everything for us. Okay, perfect. Now let's run the bin again to see if it can run the test example. And yes, the test example has been run successfully. If I see here, I have now tests, and inside the test, I have an example test. Let's open it. I want to remove it so I can create my own tests. Delete. Yes. And let's create a new file called calculator test. Perfect. I want to create a calculator class. So let me create that class as well. New PHP class calculator and done. Perfect. Right now we have only one class called calculator and we have no functionality inside it. We want to build this functionality with TDD approach. So let's get started. We can use test and it functions in pest PHP. I would like to use it here. So I can say it can add two numbers. And then I should use my anonymous function. Function here, don't forget the semicolon. And here I can write my own tests. So we've said we want to create the functionality for adding numbers. The very first thing when we have a class is to create an object from this class. So let's create that object. Calculator equals to new calculator. But it cannot find my calculator. So let's require it here. Require calculator.php. Perfect. Now here I am creating an object from that calculator class. In order to add numbers, I would like to have a function for it and it would be called add. So my total value would be something like this: calculator add 2 and 2. I expect this total value to be 4. So let's test it. Expect total to be 4. That's why I love pest. It's like speaking English. Expect total to be 4. Now let's run the test. As you can see, it failed. Why? It says call to undefined method calculator add. Okay, so let's see. All I need to do to fix that error is to create add public function add, and that's it. Let's run the test again. Failed, asserting that null is identical to 4. Here the error message changed. That's all we need to do. We try to fix each error till it's successful. So now that the message changed, it's actually a good sign. That's the whole point about TDD approach. We go step by step. It said there is no function, we created a function. It says there is no return value, we have to now add the numbers and return that value. So what's the minimum code that I can run and add those numbers? It's easy. I have to get A and B and then return A plus B. So let's run the test again. Perfect. It can add two numbers. Now I want to write the test and add the functionality for adding more than two numbers. I don't want to be limited to only two numbers. So let's write the test for it. Let's change the name. It can add multiple numbers. Perfect. We create a class. We calculate that add 2 and 2 and 2 and 4. It would be total of 10. So let's run the test. Okay, the first test is this one that has been passed, but the other one failed. Why? Because failed asserting that 4 is identical to 10. We expect our function to run through all these numbers and add them here and expect the value to be 10. But because our function only added the first two numbers, the return value is 4. So now let's fix it. We go here. First of all, I can change this to numbers, so there wouldn't be any limit in the numbers. Now all these numbers will be an array, so the minimum code that I can write to add all those numbers is to use array sum. So let's see, array sum, and I can write numbers. Perfect. So let's run the test again, and it runs successfully. Perfect. Here right now I want to make sure that all the numbers, all the values that are passed here are numbers, are numeric values. I don't want to get any name or strings. So if I get a value like that, I have two options. One is to just ignore it. One is to throw error. I personally prefer to give an error. So let's write the test and add the functionality for it. First, we can say it throws an error when the value is not numeric. Okay, we create a calculator. The total value is this. I can say 2 plus Amir, and I expect this whole function to throw an error. So there are two ways to test throwing an error. One is we can add it here. We can say throws, or we can put all of it inside a function and then expect that to throw something. So it would be something like this. Expect the whole thing to throw an error. So I personally prefer the other one because I want to check for the message as well. So I will write it here. I will remove the expect, and here I will say it throws all the numbers must be numeric. So let's see, let's run the code. It failed. Why? Let's see. Failed asserting that exception with message all the numbers must be numeric is thrown. Why? Because we use array sum. Array sum uses the first approach. It ignores all the values that are not numeric. So it would return 2 plus Amir. So for 2 plus Amir, it would ignore Amir and it would just return 2. We don't want that. So let's remove it because I don't want to use array sum. I have to write my own code. So I can have here total equals to 0. Since numbers is an array, I can write a for each loop for each numbers as number. I want to add total plus equals to number. Right now, if we return total, I expect the other two functions pass. First, let's see if the other two functions pass. There is no error with them. Perfect. The other two pass. Now there is just this one. Now, in order to throw an error, if we face a value that is not a number, we can use the built-in function called isNumeric. So here I'm going to check if isNumeric. If isNumeric, then add this to total. Perfect. Otherwise, I want to throw an error. Throw new exception, and the message, what was the message? I want to get this message exactly here. So right now I expect my third test to be successful again. So perfect. Now our calculator can add two numbers. Perfect. Can add more than two numbers. It can add multiple numbers. And if any of those values that we passed are not numeric, then it will throw an error with this message. We have tested the functionality for adding and all of them have passed. This is the TDD approach. We write the test, then we write the minimum code that would be required to pass that test. That's why we first used array sum, but later when we want to change it to throwing an error, we wrote our own function. TDD is a very powerful approach and it helps in writing a very clean and tested code. But in reality, the whole process might not be used in production, especially when you have to deliver a project in like 3 days. We use different testing approaches, but in terms of systematic progression in writing the code, TDD is amazing. We have created the functionality for adding numbers in our calculator. This is the end of this video, but you can continue adding the rest of the functionalities like division, subtraction, multiplication, and so on. So that's it for now. Let's continue with our course.